In this well-long build video, I'm going to be showing you the Venomous Taoist build, which is a build that's ideal for players who prefer to engage enemies from a safe distance and let damage over time effects do the work for them. To make this happen, we'll use the Venom Snare spell, which applies a powerful damage over time debuff to enemies. Enemies will take damage over time from both the fog and the poison. This effect is enhanced by using the Life Wither and Amplify damage spells to further boost our damage output, in addition to the damage amplification debuff from our Evil Taoist set. Additionally, we'll utilize the Thorn Shot spell to slow down enemies, allowing us to keep a safe distance and avoid incoming attacks. This build is especially effective against bosses, allowing us to remain in a safe spot while the boss slowly dies to poison. When it comes to attributes for this build, you're mainly going to want to focus on the Metal Virtue, as it increases your damage and reduces the spirit required to cast your spells. Assuming you're level 60, allocate your stats in the following way. 8 Fire Virtue. This is required to unlock the Amplify damage spell, and 52 Metal Virtue. This is our main stat. It'll greatly increase spell damage, as well as reducing the amount of spirit required to cast the spells we use for this build. When it comes to our Divine Beast, we'll be using Teng Shui, as it further enhances the effectiveness of this build. For starters, Teng Shui increases the accumulation of status effects on enemies, triggering the poison damage over time effect from Venom Stare almost instantly. Teng Shui also increases the damage dealt to enemies afflicted with negative effects, thereby amplifying the damage of our damage over time debuff. Lastly, we'll get a passive effect that applies a power drop debuff to enemies hit by our wizardry spells, greatly reducing the damage they deal even as they hit us. Next, we'll be taking a look at the spells we use for the Venomous Taoist build. The biggest issue with this build is that you'll need to build up 12 morale in order to use your main spell, Venom Snare. Since you start most main missions with 0 morale, you'll have to start with a different spell combination and then swap into our main build, and you can do this by interacting with a battle flag. Before you reach 12 morale, you'll want to use the following spells. Venomous Discharge. This releases a bubble of poison that bursts and generate poison bogs. These bogs will cause damage over time to enemies touching them. Thorn Shot. This releases cursed bolts that create thorns on contact with enemies or terrain. Enemies that step on the thorns will be slowed for a certain period of time. Molten Calamity Thorn releases a metal imbued attack that deals damage to enemies it touches. If those enemies are inflicted with any ailments, they will be fully cured, and they will take additional damage corresponding to the number of ailments cured. And finally, Amplify Damage. For a certain period of time, increase both the damage you deal and the damage you take from enemies. At the beginning of the level, you'll only be able to use Thorn Shot. This deals considerable damage, and the slow effect will help you finish off enemies with your main weapon. Thanks to Teng Shui, you'll also apply the Power Drop debuff, making it safer to engage them in melee combat. Once you reach 12 morale, you'll want to swap into your main build, which consists of the following spells. Life Wither, which releases a cursed bolt to the front. Enemies hit will receive more damage for a certain period of time. Thorn Shot, which we already covered. Venom Snare, which releases a cursed bolt to the front that will form a poison fog around an enemy it hits. The fog will cause damage over time to enemies touching it. And Amplify Damage. You'll want to start off by buffing yourself with Amplify Damage, then engage the enemy using Thorn Shot to slow it down, and Life Wither to increase the damage they take. From here, continue by continuously casting Venomous Snare, which will deal damage on impact, apply the Fog debuff that deals damage over time in an area, and Venom, which also deals damage over time. Next, we'll take a look at equipment, starting with the main melee weapon that we use, which is Sword of Yu the Great. You won't be engaging in melee except during missions where you start with low morale. The sword is part of the Evil Taoist set, which we'll use for this build, but it also scales mainly with metal, which is our main virtue. When it comes to your side melee weapon, you can use whatever you want, since we won't really be focusing on melee weapons. However, you will want to apply toxin attack power and damage to enemies with poison to these weapons to further increase your damage over time. When it comes to ranged weapons, our main ranged weapon is the Tiger Hunting Bow. This bow scales mainly with metal and comes in very handy at the beginning of missions when we have low morale. When it comes to other ranged weapons, you can use whichever you like. Bonuses that I highly recommend on these weapons, though, are enemy detection to help you see enemies on the minimap, as well as flag detection to help you get to morale faster by finding their locations, as well as morale rank points gained to help you get morale quickly, and toxin attack power to further increase the damage over time effects. When it comes to our armor, we already mentioned, but this build is going to be using the Evil Taoist set because of its set bonus. The damage amplification debuff stacks with our other damage amplifications, and we also get a huge boost to spell damage and elemental damage. When it comes to bonuses on your armor, you'll focus on toxin attack power and damage to enemies with poison. You can use any accessories you want for this build, but pay attention to things like spell damage and toxin damage, etc. Final tips. You can save your build configurations by interacting with a battle flag. Head to Battle Preparations and then onto the Battle Set tab. Here you can save your spell configurations to quickly swap between them once you reach 12 morale. You can use this build exclusively for bosses if you want. Just play the mission with your regular build, and then swap into this configuration at the last battle flag before the final boss. While fighting bosses, you'll often see that their spirit gauge is almost completely depleted because of the damage they're taking. Don't be afraid to get near and use a single light attack to stagger them and perform a fatal attack. The fog debuff of the Venom Snare spell deals damage to everything around it, making it great against groups of enemies. Just try and keep them grouped up. Make sure to keep spamming the Venom Snare spell as often as possible, as it will deal damage and reset the debuff each time it hits. Make sure to use the bow during the start of missions to build up your morale. Aim for the head for maximum damage, and then use your spells to finish off enemies you've weakened. Lastly, using Elixir and interacting with Vengeance Swords is another way to increase your morale until you can get going. So that wraps up our Venomous Taoist build. If you have further questions, make sure you leave them in the comments. This is a really strong build against bosses specifically. It is a boss killer build per se. So if you're struggling against some bosses, make sure you swap into it before the boss fight and give it a go. For instance, if you're struggling against Lu Bu or something, see how it goes against him and see if you can use this in situations where you might be struggling with certain bosses. Also, make sure you bookmark the Wolong Wiki. We have everything you need for the game on there. We're continuing to update it, but it's like 99% done at this point. So if you have something specific you want to find, like an armor set or set bonus, make sure you check that out.